Hello fans, welcome to another edition of the Cleveland Sports Show. I am your host, Darius Sethna. Thank you so much for taking some time out of your day today to listen to the Cleveland Sports Show. So happy to come back to you with another week and some more awesome updates in the sports world. That's right, the NBA playoffs will officially begin this weekend. Logan Purcell and I will talk about the conclusion of the Cavs season as well as the play-in games that occurred in the NBA this week, and we'll also preview some spicy playoff matchups for you that are going to happen this weekend. Also going to dive into the Indians and give you updates on what's been going on with them. Logan will bring me his baseball analysis again this week. And we'll also talk about the Tim Tebow signing that happened this week, as now Tim Tebow will be a member of the Jacksonville Jaguars under head coach Urban Meyer. So we'll break down their schedule and see what Tim Tebow can bring to the squad. Ladies and gentlemen, you're not going to want to miss this episode of the Cleveland Sports Show. We've got a pretty interesting sports fact for you today as well. But first and always, here is our intro. Ladies and gentlemen, this is Darius Sethna of NordoniaHills.News, and the Cleveland Sports Show starts right now. Hello everyone, welcome to our latest edition of the Cleveland Sports Show. As always, I am your host, Darius Sethna. So happy that you could join us this week because we have a lot to break down, and it all kicks off, no pun intended, with our sports fact of the day. So if you're guessing the sports fact of the day is soccer related, well, guess what? You're right with that pun. Now, today is May 21st, 2021. And on this date, all the way back in 1904, happy 117th birthday to FIFA, the Federation Internationale de Football Association. This was in French. My French is horrible. I took Spanish, so I apologize for that. But the FIFA organization was formed in Paris, France on this day back in 1904. Now, what FIFA is known for, most iconically, is the World Cup, this soccer tournament that captivates the world every 4 years. The inaugural World Cup was in 1930 with the host nation Uruguay winning the first ever World Cup as well as hosting it. Now, in terms of World Cup winners, Brazil, the South American superstar nation that has produced a lot of superstars, 5 total World Cup titles. First one in 1958, 1962, 1970, 1994, and then most recently in 2002. Germany and Italy tied for second place for most total World Cup wins. Germany with 4 wins, Italy as well with 4. Italy won their most recent title in 2006, with Germany's being 7 years ago at the World Cup in Brazil. Argentina and France tie for third place, as well as Uruguay, each of these 3 nations with 2 World Cup appearances, and then England and Spain also one World Cup each. England in 1966 when they hosted the tournament, and then Spain in 2010. The tournament was in South Africa at that time. So we have a total of 8 nations that have won the FIFA World Cup. There have been 21 tournaments thus far. Now, the 2022 World Cup is scheduled to be in Qatar, and that tournament, the World Cup is usually held in the summer months, June and July. However, this in 2022, the FIFA World Cup will actually be played in November and December due to the extremely humid and hot conditions of Qatar in the summer. It will be a little bit cooler in the wintertime. November and December of 2022 is when the next FIFA World Cup is scheduled to kick off. Hopefully, coronavirus will be a thing of the past mostly, and we could get on and watch some awesome World Cup soccer, because the FIFA World Cup, if anything, has produced some very wonderful memories. And that's your sports fact of the day. Happy 117th birthday to the organization of FIFA. On this day in 1904 in Paris, France, is when the organization was founded. Let's stick to some soccer now. We're going to head out to England for the Premier League. We'll give you some updates there. Manchester City, most recently, 83 points thus far on the season. Manchester City, in terms of their schedule, lost their most recent game this past Tuesday to Brighton. They actually had to play down a man due to a red card. They lost the game 3-2. However, no worries for them because they are still in first place in the Premier League. Manchester United, their in-city rival, comes in at second place, 12 points behind them with 71 points. They have 20 wins, 11 draws, and 6 losses. Chelsea comes in at third place. In 37 matches played, Chelsea with 19 wins, 10 draws, and 8 losses on the season. They have 67 points and are eyeing that second place that Manchester United has. Fourth place, we have Liverpool, 19 wins, 19 draws, and 9 losses on the season thus far for Liverpool. They have 66 total points. Leicester City comes in at fifth place with 20 wins, 6 draws, and 11 losses. They also have a combined total of 66 points, and that rounds out your top 5 in the Premier League for this week. West Ham comes in at 6th place. Tottenham Hotspurs come in at 7th place. Everton comes in at 8th place. So this week in the Premier League. Stats thus far, Harry Kane and Mohamed Salah officially tied for top goal scorer in the Premier League. Each of these two players with 22 goals on the season. That's right, 22 goals in a season. That's pretty spectacular if you think about it. Bruno Fernandes comes in at second place, 18 goals on the season for the Manchester United player. Son Heung-min of Tottenham Hotspur comes in at third place with a total of 17 goals on the season thus far. And then Dominic Calvert-Lewin and Patrick Bamford come in at fourth place. They tie for fourth place, each of those players with 16 goals on the season thus far. Harry Kane still leads the league in assists with 13. However, Bruno Fernandes, who I just mentioned as the second leading scorer in the Premier League, also second in total assists. Fernandes is only 1 assist behind tying Harry Kane and tying for most assists in the season thus far. Kevin De Bruyne of Manchester City comes in at third place with a total of 11 assists on the season, and then Jack Grealish and Son Heung-min of Tottenham Hotspur, Grealish of Aston Villa, tie for fourth place. They each have 10 assists on the season. Now, many Premier League soccer fans have been worried about the possibility of Harry Kane leaving Tottenham Hotspur. Chelsea has been a strong option that Harry Kane has been considering in going to Chelsea. Now, Chelsea's record thus far in the Premier League much better than Tottenham Hotspur. As I mentioned, the Chelsea 19 wins, 10 draws, and 8 losses. Tottenham, despite the amazing efforts of Harry Kane, leading the league in both goal scoring and assists, is only 7th place in the Premier League. They only have 5 more wins than they do losses. 17 wins, 8 draws, and 12 losses for Tottenham Hotspur. So 7th isn't the worst place you could be in the Premier League, but with the efforts of Harry Kane, I would think they would be at least in the top 5, and they're not. And as I mentioned, Chelsea, one of the strong suitors that Harry Kane is eyeing. We'll see what happens. I'll keep you updated with all the Harry Kane news surrounding the Premier League as we head into the off-season. However, it's time to talk about the MLS for a little bit here, and the Columbus Crew, the defending MLS Cup champion. Now, the Crew have only had 1 game since our last episode. It was this Sunday, May 16th. It was a road game against New England, and Columbus Crew lost this matchup against New England by a final score of 1-0, so a competitive, tight game. This was actually a rematch of last year's Eastern Conference Finals matchup that in which the Crew defeated New England And this was as I mentioned, hard-fought game, but a late and a tough game for the tough pill for the Crew to swallow. In the 86th minute, the dying minutes of the game, a New England player, Adam Buksa, scored a goal to give New England a 1-0 lead. New England had 11 shots compared to Columbus's only 6, and shots on target for New England, 3 shots on target compared to only 1 for the Crew. This was a tight game in terms of possession. New England outpossessed Columbus 51% to 49%. And as I mentioned, just a tough loss for the Crew to swallow. However, the Crew need to bounce back, and they will be in New York City for the third game of their 3-game road trip. Tomorrow at 7:30 p.m., New York City FC will be hosting the Columbus Crew. On Saturday, May 29th, is when the next Crew home game will be after that game in New York City, and they will be facing Toronto. So Crew will be trying to get some revenge against Toronto FC on Saturday, May 29th. The Crew will then host, they will actually have a very long break, almost a month actually, and June 19th is when they will be back in action against the Chicago Fire before heading back out on the road against Philadelphia. So the game you need to be worried about right now, Crew fans, is this game tomorrow at 7:30 p.m. against New York City FC. Now, I can't forget our soccer fans down in Southwest Ohio, the FC Cincinnati soccer team. Only one game for them as well. They've only had 2 games in May. I talked about a couple of weeks ago their matchup against Orlando City where they lost 3-0. FC Cincinnati played another Florida-based team, this time Inter Miami. They hosted Inter Miami and lost that game this past Sunday, May 16th, by a final score of 3-2. Once again, very competitive soccer game, just like the Crew. Gonzalo Higuain, who is an Argentine superstar striker, scored 2 goals in the game for Inter Miami, and Break Shea actually got the party started for Inter Miami, scoring a 7th-minute goal to give them an early 1-0 lead. For FC Cincinnati, in the 59th minute, Alvaro Barreal scored their first goal of the match, and then in the 82nd minute, Nick Hagland scored. This game was actually tied, and it was very tough. FC Cincinnati headed into halftime down 2-0. The 2 players for Cincinnati scored those goals, and 3 minutes after Hagland's goal to tie this game up, Gonzalo Higuain, another deadly goal which put Inter Miami over the top, and FC Cincinnati, unfortunately, lose this matchup by a final score of 3-2. FC Cincinnati have to have a quick bounce back as well. They will play Montreal tomorrow. It'll be considered a road game down in Florida. It'll be played at 1 p.m. tomorrow. Now, the next matchup for FC Cincinnati after that game against Montreal will be Saturday, May 29th. They'll be hosting the New England Revolution. And then once again, June 19th is when they will also have a very long break. And then June 19th at 7:30 p.m., they'll get back at it again. They will host the Colorado Rapids, as I mentioned, June 19th at 7:30 p.m. And ladies and gentlemen, it's now time to talk some NBA playoff basketball and wrap up the season for the Cleveland Cavaliers. And who's with me to do it once again? It's Logan Purcell. Logan, thanks again for joining me for another week of the podcast. How have you been doing so far this week?
I've been doing great. Thanks for having me, and I'm really excited to get going today.
Yeah, very excited to talk about some playoff basketball that will be starting this weekend. But first, Logan, I want to wrap up the Cavs schedule here. So the Cavs were eliminated from any kind of playoff or play-in contention a few weeks ago. They finished their season 22 wins and 50 losses. That's 3 games better than their previous 2 seasons. They lost their final game, Logan, in Brooklyn to the Nets. This one was never close, to be quite honest with you. The Nets, as I expected, to be quite honest with you, just overpowered the Cavs in terms of their talent. In terms of box score, Kevin Durant, 23 points, 13 assists, finished with a double-double. Kyrie Irving, the former Cav, with 17 points, 6 rebounds, and 2 assists. And then Landry Shamet, 12 points in 25 minutes. He's been a big boost for the Nets, especially in this final stretch run. Jeff Green has been terrific for the Nets all season long. Another former member of the Cavs, Green, with 13 points, 2 rebounds, all in 22 minutes Sunday night against Cleveland. On the Cavs side, Colin Sexton was ejected, Logan, for what I thought wasn't a flagrant 2 foul on Kevin Durant, but the refs thought otherwise. 16 points, 2 rebounds, and 5 assists for Colin Sexton. Isaac Okoro, Logan, actually tied with Dean Wade as the top 2 scorers of the game. Okoro, I think you could use this as a positive ending the season. He's really been scoring the ball a lot more, Logan. So I'll ask you this first. What were your thoughts on this game? Because I honestly thought it was a pretty predictable result of what was going to happen even before tip-off.
I completely agree with you with the fact that it was pretty predictable even before the first tip had gone. But to me, what you have to look at, and I'm going to shy away from the Cavs just to make this single statement, is the Nets are looking scary right now. I mean, don't get me wrong, it is the Cavs, but out of all the games that these guys have played, we haven't seen 2 of the Nets stars play well and shoot efficiently. Kevin Durant shooting 80% and Kyrie 7 of 11 from the field.
Yeah.
So I just wanted to make that one comment that this team doesn't look one of those teams that you're just going to be able to brush off and it's just a bunch of top-heavy guys.
No, I mean,
from the Cavs side, I do agree with you. Isaac Okoro has definitely picked up his game in the second half of the season, and he's played a lot more seasons than we saw at the beginning of the season. And I was one of those guys that was like, kind of seemed like a waste of a pick. But I think he's done really, really well.
Do you still feel that way about Okoro, Logan? Because I feel like now this is a guy who has some promise. So do you still feel like we could have chosen a better pick, or do you think Okoro was the right guy moving forward?
Well, as of right now, I don't know if he's the best option available. I mean, we've seen guys like Tyrese Halliburton have amazing seasons. He was drafted, I believe, 13th. And so on. So I think that there's a lot of upside to Isaac Okoro right now.
Yeah.
And he was a huge piece to the team this year. But I do think that it's going to take a couple more years until we fully decide whether he is the guy for us.
And heading into the offseason, Logan, one last question I want to ask you about the Cavs. In terms of the NBA draft, what type of player do you think the Cavs need to select? I'm kind of thinking the Cavs need to select either a steady Lou Williams kind of sixth man to give you some scoring off the bench, or just a quality shooter like a Ray Allen or a Klay Thompson kind of guy who just is a bona fide three-point shooter. I think the Cavs need something like that just to give their offense, just to have them have a better built all-around offense. So what are your thoughts on what the Cavs need to select this upcoming summer in the NBA draft?
Well, I think that is a very good point in the shooting aspect, and that was one of their weak spots all season. But one that's probably even more important in my eyes is getting a playmaker. I mean, we saw guys, Darius Garland, as I mentioned last week, definitely stepped up from a playmaking standpoint. But I think this team still has a lot of work to do from a playmaking standpoint.
Right.
I think that a true playmaking guard, or even if it was a forward, even if a forward coming out of college, maybe even the G League, was getting 6 or 7 assists a game,
right?
That would be a huge boost for that offense. And defensively, it also gives you some versatility.
Yeah, absolutely. I would love to see a kind of a Rondo type player on the Cavs as well. We'll see what they do in the NBA draft. When that date for the draft comes closer, Logan and I will keep you updated and we'll give you our reactions to what the picks are. But now, Logan, the Cavs season's finally over, but the NBA season is not over. The play-in tournament games will conclude tonight with the Memphis Grizzlies taking on the Golden State Warriors in San Francisco. The loser is eliminated from playoff contention. The winner will be the 8th seed in the Western Conference, But we've concluded the majority of our play-in tournament games, Logan. And let's start with the first round of those East games. Let's start with Hornets-Pacers, Logan. I'll tell you right now, I was extremely disappointed in the Charlotte Hornets and their performance. When I heard that the Indiana Pacers were going to be without Karis LeVert, I thought that they were going to fight hard, but I expected Charlotte, just from a talent perspective, to win this game. But then Doug McDermott went off 21 points in 26 minutes for the Pacers. O'Shea Brissett as well, 33 minutes, 23 points. It was the O'Shea Brissett and Doug McDermott show that put Charlotte, basically, they decimated Charlotte, and the game was over to me after the first quarter. What was your reaction to this game, Logan?
Yeah, I mean, the Pacers got out, and they went to work. They got their job done. But another guy that you can't really look aside from is, even though he wasn't dominant offensively from a scoring aspect, Domantas Sabonis.
Yeah.
With 14 points, 21 rebounds.
Yes.
And 1 assist away shy of a triple-double.
Yeah.
I mean, those numbers are not numbers that a true power forward should be putting up in today's NBA, regardless of who it is. So in my eyes, that's another number that you just got to take into consideration. I think this was a great performance for that entire Pacers group, even without the likes of Karis LeVert.
In terms of this game, Logan, too, are you more impressed with how the Pacers stepped up without their scoring leader in LeVert and without Miles Turner as well? Or were you more disappointed in the Charlotte Hornets? Because everyone other than Gordon Hayward was healthy and ready to go, and they didn't step up to the plate.
Yeah, I mean, I'm personally more disappointed in the Hornets and not stepping up to the plate, especially a man by the name of LaMelo Ball.
Yes.
Who was last year's number 3 overall pick and is going to be the NBA's Rookie of the Year, in my opinion. He only shot 4 of 14.
Right.
1 rebound, 4 assists, and just as many turnovers.
Yes. Yeah.
I mean, I don't know about you, but that doesn't sound like Rookie of the Year numbers in a play in basically a playoff.
Could you attribute that to the wrist injury that he suffered earlier in the season?
I mean, you definitely could, but his numbers coming off of that injury weren't awful. I mean, they were such inconsistent, but he was still dropping 22, 27, numbers like that. He was still getting up there.
Yeah.
So I think you still have to take into consideration the fact that this kid, he's got to learn to play in the playoffs. And Miles Bridges went to work. It ain't like he didn't have help. I mean, Terry Rozier obviously struggled. He didn't hit a 3, and he shot 9.
Mm-hmm.
But Miles Bridges shot 10 of 16.
Right.
Very efficient performance from one of the better younger power forwards in the NBA. But LaMelo Ball's got to be that guy, that he was during the regular season.
Right, and sadly, since he was not that guy in Tuesday's play-in matchup, the Charlotte Hornets have been eliminated from playoff contention, and so have the Pacers, but we'll get to the Pacers story in a little bit here. Let's talk about the other game that we had Tuesday night, the other Eastern Conference play-in game, Boston Celtics and Washington Wizards. Now, whoever won this game would automatically be the 7th seed. The loser of this game would play the Pacers in that final seeding game. And Celtics handled their business against the Wizards, Logan, won that game at TD Garden, 118-100. Jason Tatum has been on a mission this season. This has been his best season by far to me. At 50 points against Washington in 41 minutes, 8 rebounds, 4 assists. Kemba Walker also with a very strong game, Logan. Kemba had 29.7 rebounds and 2 assists. To me, everyone's saying it, and I agree with it as well. Kemba Walker is the X factor if this Celtics team wants to be successful in the playoffs, especially now with Jaylen Brown out. You're going to need to find another scoring option, and I think Kemba Walker did a great job of and he looked good to me on Tuesday night. It wasn't like he got 29 points and was struggling to get it. He was drawing charges, and physically, he just looked in shape and looked like he was ready to embrace that playoff brutality. On the other side of things, Bradley Beal, 22 points, was suffering from a hamstring injury a little bit. Russell Westbrook, not his greatest game. He did finish with a double-double, 20 points and 14 rebounds, all in 37 minutes. But to me, the star of the show was unequivocally Jason Tatum. Logan, I want to get your thoughts on this game, and especially Kemba Walker's impact on the Celtics getting that 7th seed. What are your thoughts?
I mean, the Celtics, in my opinion, are not finals contenders or Eastern Conference finals contenders at this point.
Yeah.
Especially since they do play the Brooklyn Nets in the first round.
Yeah, we'll talk about that a little later. Yeah.
I 100% agree. Jason Tatum he got his business done at TD Garden in Boston. against this Wizards team. I think that he just went to work. You mentioned the 50 points. Kemba Walker is going to be one of the X factors. And in my eyes, I think one of the black horse X factors of this team is Evan Fournier. I think he has the ability to put up elite numbers when he's on.
Right.
And I think that if he's on, the Celtics team is going to be tough to beat regardless of who they're playing.
Yes.
So I think that now that Jaylen Brown is out, this team will find a lot more difficult time getting deeper into the playoffs. But I do still see a good chance if Kemba Walker can play like Kemba Walker can.
Yeah, and Kemba Walker, we just talked about the X factor. I definitely want to see what Evan Fournier can do because he can certainly play better. He actually ended the season playing very well. Only on Tuesday night, however, he only had 8 points and 6 rebounds, and that was all in 36 minutes. So hopefully, Evan Fournier can up his game against Brooklyn because the Celtics are going to need everything they can without Jaylen Brown. Now let's look at the Western Conference play-in tournament side of things, Logan. First, we'll start with the Spurs and Grizzlies. Now, Spurs got off to a terrible start in this game. They were down by as many as 19. They actually finished the first quarter down 19-38 against Ja Morant and the Memphis Grizzlies. The Grizzlies were the higher seed, so therefore they had home court for this game, and the loser of this game would be eliminated. But after falling down by 19, the Spurs fought their way back. They outscored Memphis 30-18 in the second quarter, and then outscored Memphis in the fourth quarter. They actually took the lead at one point in the fourth quarter, but Ja Morant and Jonas Valanciunas really stepped up for the Memphis Grizzlies. Valanciunas, 23 points and 23 rebounds, all in 38 minutes. Logan, this might be the best we've ever seen Jonas Valanciunas play. And then Ja Morant finished with 20 points, 6 rebounds, and 6 assists, all in 41 minutes. Logan, I want to get your thoughts on the Memphis Grizzlies' performance. Based on what you saw from Jonas Valanciunas and Ja Morant, how far do you think this Grizzlies team, if they make the playoffs and beat the Warriors, how far do you think they can go?
Maybe first round.
Right.
I mean, we're still talking about this Jazz team who you, for one, have talked very highly of, and a lot of NBA analysts have talked very highly of the team. Look out for the Jazz.
Yeah, absolutely.
I think that their regular season will come to fruition. I think this is going to be one of those teams that is going to play well in the postseason. So, assuming they do beat the Warriors, I think this team is going to be out in the first round in probably 5 games.
Yeah.
I would like to put another side note out there. Ja Morant is most certainly not a top 5 point guard in the NBA right now.
No,
I know
absolutely
he said that he believes he was a top 5 point guard in the NBA. That is not close at all.
He certainly has the ability to eventually get there, but not right now.
Yeah, no, his potential is there, but I can name probably almost maybe at this point 10 other guards better than him.
Yeah.
Who plays right now.
Yeah.
So, to me, I would just like to put it out there that I know that's been something that people have been talking about, and I've been asked it a couple times. Ja Morant is not a top 5 point guard in the NBA right now.
Yeah, and as we just said, Ja Morant, I definitely think one day he will be a top 5 point guard. But there's so many guys. Think of Kyrie, even John Wall right now. I know he's had a rough season, but in his prime, John Wall is a great point guard. And we'll see what the Grizzlies can do. They have a tough matchup against the Warriors tonight. And, we'll see what happens. Now, we'll talk about our last Western Conference play-in game, Logan. LeBron and Steph Curry facing off the Warriors and the Lakers. Lakers won this one in a nail-biter, 103-100. But they really struggled in that first half, Logan. They were down 55-42. They were down 13 at the end of the first half. LeBron was kind of looking sluggish. Anthony Davis was struggling as well. Meanwhile, Stephen Curry, to me, even though the Warriors lost, he looked like the best player on the court on Wednesday night. But in the second half, LeBron James and Anthony Davis picked it up. They combined for a total of 47 points, almost half of Los Angeles' scoring output. Dennis Schroeder, who has returned from some COVID protocol issues, had 12 points in 30 minutes to go along with 5 assists as well. So how did this game, Logan, make you feel about the Lakers? Because LeBron got poked in the eye, made that crazy 3. The Lakers win. So how do you feel do you feel confident about what the Lakers can do? Because now they're going to play the Suns in the first round, so they're going to have a challenge ahead of them.
I mean, yeah, you could definitely make the argument that the Lakers are going to have a really tough time against the Suns. I mean, it's not even an argument. I think it is going to be a tough series for both sides. But based off of that performance against Golden State and Steph Curry and Golden State, I don't see how anybody can stop the Lakers playing at their best. I mean, LeBron James, as you mentioned, looked sluggish. And even in the second half, he didn't look 100%. He didn't look right.
Yeah.
He still ended the game with 22 points, 11 rebounds, and 10 assists.
Yep, triple-double.
I mean, oh my Lord. I know I talk about him not being the greatest of all time, but he can just do it all. Mm-hmm. Anthony Davis, 25 points, as you mentioned, 12 boards. He had another fantastic performance when it mattered most.
Right.
And you know, you mentioned Steph Curry. They need to get that man some help.
Well, Klay Thompson will be back. Klay Thompson will be back next year, so that'll be a big boost.
That'll be a huge aid, but I don't know even in then if that's going to be enough. I think they need to get him some more help. But I mean, good Lord, Curry is just fantastic. Mm-hmm. LeBron James is bionic, and Anthony Davis is his sidekick. So it was a very great game to watch. But this tells me that the Lakers are going to have a tough series ahead of them, but they got a chance. And
I want to go back to the Warriors for a minute here, Logan. You were talking about Steph Curry, and I completely agree with you. He definitely needs more help. But I want to talk about Andrew Wiggins for a little bit here. You know, in that game on Wednesday night against the Lakers, he had 21 points, 3 rebounds, and 2 assists all in 39 minutes. Have you seen kind of an improvement from Wiggins here in terms of his development towards as this season's progressed? I feel like he's really been improved. He's obviously not the most improved player of the year. I'm not saying that by anything, by even a measuring stick at all. But in terms of Andrew Wiggins, he's been progressing to me, and he's been improving his game a little bit. What are your thoughts on that? Do you see the same way?
Yeah, I think throughout the game and through 4 straight quarters, I think he's gotten a lot more efficient in a singular game. Typically, you'd see a slow start from him, and then, he'd kind of pick it up at the end of the game. But I think that you've seen a lot of progression as his consistency through a 4-quarter game. Yeah,
and we'll see. Andrew Wiggins is going to be a big piece for the Warriors. I'm gonna say that they move on to the playoffs. I think they'll handle their business against the Grizzlies tonight, and then they'll play the Jazz. And I think Andrew Wiggins is going to be an integral piece for that Warriors team if they want to make some noise against Utah in that first round. Don't forget, Grizzlies-Warriors, Friday night, May 21st tonight, 9 p.m. Eastern Time is when the game will tip off. Now, Logan, it's time to talk about the playoffs themselves because we already have some matchups scheduled. Saturday, we have a slate of games. I want to kind of talk about each series one by one here and get your thoughts about it. Let's talk about the Eastern Conference first. 6th seed versus 3 seed Heat Bucks, respectively. Miami Heat will be taking on the Milwaukee Bucks. That game 1 of that series tomorrow from Pfizer Forum in Milwaukee. Logan, I'm thinking probably Bucks in 6 or 7. I think this is going to be a hard-fought series, but I think the Bucks have some intentions of revenge on their plate. I think that they are a much more balanced team now with Drew Holiday to the mix. And, that big 3 with Middleton, Giannis, and now Drew Holiday. I definitely think they're going to win this series, but I can't just ignore Bam Adebayo, Jimmy Butler, and the Heat. I'm saying this series is going at least 6 games, if not 7. What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, with the game, you're, I think, 100% correct. You could definitely make an argument that one of those teams gets hot in game 2 and 3 and just takes it to 5 and ends it early, but I don't see that happening. But personally, I'm not sure I 100% agree with you. I will personally be taking the Miami Heat in 6.
Well, okay, really?
I think that when you look top to bottom, that team came in last year to 5 seed, but all of those guys on that team show that they performed in the playoffs.
But
Jimmy Butler was lethal last year, all season.
But I was going to ask you this. I was going to ask you this, Logan. Sorry to cut you off here, but I would think. Don't you think the Bucks have some pretty intense intentions for the Miami Heat? Because if Giannis, think about it. Because if Giannis loses in the first round, he is going to be ridiculed for the rest of his career, and I don't think that he would ever live it down. So I think you have that scenario playing in hand as well.
Yeah, I mean, Giannis has got a lot on the plate, but that's the thing. That's what's going to separate the greats that are remembered for being great and the greats that are remembered for being dominant.
Yeah.
I think that if Giannis can't perform in the playoffs, because realistically speaking, you could drop 40 points, average 40 points, 20 assists, and 20 rebounds a game.
Right.
If you never win a ring, you'll never be considered one of the greatest of all time.
Right.
That's just how today's game is.
Yeah.
So the problem is that I just don't know if he's going to have the kind of mental capacity or the ability as a whole physically to put up the numbers. And Giannis has never been clutch. And that's what it is in playoffs time, come postseason.
Right.
Who can finish?
Yeah.
It's not about how you drive. It's not about how it's about how you finish.
Right.
And if Giannis can't prove to me in this series that he can finish off a 6 seed, you're right. You're 100% right. The rest, in my eyes, it's pretty intense. But the rest of his career could definitely be on the line in this series.
Yeah, and so for this Heat Bucks series, Logan, I have Bucks in about 6 or 7. You have Heat in 6. So this is going to be a great series. All these series are going to be pretty fascinating. Let's go to another series. We were talking about this one a little earlier. Celtics Nets. I've heard a lot of people saying this is going to be a sweep. Nets are going to run away with this. My thoughts were, I'll give the Celtics at least one game. I think the way Jason Tatum's been playing, Kemba Walker, I think, is going to have a strong performance in this series. But without Jaylen Brown, I don't think the series is going to go very far. I'm taking Nets in 5, Logan. What are your thoughts?
Yeah, I think that's a fair argument. I 100% agree about Jason Tatum.
Yeah.
I mean, this guy is going to have 1 or 2 games that he is just going to do everything. But, personally, believe it or not, I am going to give this team 6 games.
Okay.
And I know that sounds like a bit of a stretch, but we do have to, give respect to the fact Kemba Walker is on this team.
Yeah.
And you can assume that Kemba Walker is going to give you 30 or 40 one of these nights.
Right.
And that's also, you're also assuming that all 3 All-Stars are playing every game.
Well, I would think so.
I don't even know if we've had 10 games with all 3 of them. I don't think we have.
Yeah, barely. But I think that's the reason why, because of the playoffs. Like, now that the playoffs are starting, I think they understand. They all seem healthy now, so I think they're all going to play, in my opinion.
Yeah, I mean, that is the assumption. But at the same time, I mean, if you're Brooklyn, I mean, why not rest another guy? Why not rest one of them through the series? What's the point? Or why bother playing them and risking another injury? You know what I mean? So it does depend. I will give the Celtics 6 games just because, that's also hope, I guess.
Right.
But I think it's going to be a decent series. I think it'll be a very entertaining series to watch. Yeah. For sure. But I will take the Nets in 6.
Yeah, and it's the Celtics, to me, just without Jaylen Brown, are a depleted squad. But Jason Tatum and Kemba Walker are definitely going to put in work. I have hope for them that they're going to get their numbers in this series. But when you're going against that 3-headed monster in Brooklyn and your offense is compromised, it's pretty much over for you, in my estimation. Let's go to another Eastern Conference series, Logan. Wizards 76ers. Now, the Wizards clinched their playoff spot yesterday against the Indiana Pacers. Indy walloped the Pacers 142-115. So Indiana's season is over officially after that big win against Charlotte. They couldn't make it 2 in a row, lose against the Washington Wizards. So now Washington, after being, after starting the season 0-5, and we were talking about them at the beginning of the season being very disappointing, Logan, they've managed to get themselves as the 8th seed in the Eastern Conference, but they're going up against a powerhouse in the Philadelphia 76ers. I think Westbrook and Beal are a terrific backcourt, and the reason I think the Sixers will win this series, but I'm going to give the Wizards 2 games. I'm going to say Sixers in 6. And the reason I'm giving the Sixers 2 games is the Wizards 2 games is because I think that the backcourt of Westbrook and Beal is just that dynamic and that great. I don't think that they're just going to be satisfied with one game. I think they obviously want to win the series, but I think the 76ers offense is just loaded. I think they have quality guys coming off the bench like Shake Milton and Matisse Thybulle. You have other guys like Tyrese Maxey, who has had a strong season in my eyes. So I think the Sixers, I think they're going to show their dominance, but I think it's going to take them 6 games. What are your thoughts on this Wizards-Sixers series, Logan?
This is the first one where I truly disagree with you. I mean, a decent amount, honestly. I do agree with the Sixers winning. But believe it or not, I'm going to have a little bit of a risky take here. I'm going to go with the Sixers in 4. I do think it's going to be a sweep. And my reasoning for this, we did see a lot of dominance. And you look on paper, that backcourt for Washington is very dominant. There's no doubt about it. 2 of the best guards that the NBA has to offer. But, I mean, you look in the past, they played Boston. And don't get me wrong, Boston's not a team to mess with. I just gave them 6 games against Brooklyn, but they didn't lose by 5. They almost lost by 20.
Yeah.
So, I mean, to me, the Sixers are not a team where you can go down 20 at halftime or anything like that and hold it. It's not going to happen.
Yeah.
So, to me, I think Joel Embiid is just going to be too much because you do talk about the backcourt of Westbrook and Beal, but to me, you're talking about 2 of the best on-ball defenders in the NBA on that Sixers team. Tobias Harris is one of the most underrated defenders in the NBA right now, and Ben Simmons is going to be the Defensive Player of the Year.
Yeah.
And then Joel Embiid, who's going to guard him?
But that's what I'm saying.
But right now, who can guard Joel?
But that's what I'm saying. The Sixers have, the majority of their offense comes from the forward positions. You have Tobias Harris, Joel Embiid. Ben Simmons can't shoot to save his life. Let's be honest here. So in terms of backcourt scoring, which is the more efficient scoring and which is the majority of the scoring is done in today's NBA, I'm going to say Russell Westbrook and Bradley Beal, they've both proved themselves multiple times. So I expect them to handle their business for 2 games. I think the Sixers will go up 2-0. I think the Wizards will I think they'll win their 2 in D.C. Sixers will win Game 5 in Philly, and then they'll close it out back in the nation's capital in Game 6. Because I just think that that backcourt is just, they can score. Westbrook can rebound. The Wizards lead the league in pace also, Logan. So you think about that. And Joel Embiid is not the fastest guy we know. So I think that's going to be a big deficit the Sixers are going to face as well.
Yeah. I mean, it could go either way, honestly.
Yeah.
I did say it was a hot take, so, I mean, 4 or 5 in my eyes. I don't know if I would go 6. It is a very dominant backcourt, like I mentioned, but if any team has the defensive capabilities to stop Westbrook and Beal, it is going to be the Philadelphia 76ers.
Yeah, absolutely. So, Logan, correct me if I'm mistaken, you said Sixers with the sweep, right?
Yes.
Okay, so Logan's got Sixers in 4, I've got Sixers in 6. Game 1 between the Wizards and 76ers will be this Sunday, May 23rd at 1 p.m. from Wells Fargo Center in Philadelphia. Now, let's talk about the last Eastern Conference matchup, Logan, and to me, this one is a little bit overlooked. It's one that I am super excited to watch. Hawks and Knicks, to me, these are 2 evenly matched teams, in not just in terms of youth, but just in terms of Atlanta has a very good scoring roster that can score. You guys like Trae Young, John Collins, Lou Williams is now on the team. You've got Bogdanović, who's arguably had the best season of his career. And then you have the Knicks, who are more of an old school, take it inside, take it in the paint, grind it out game with Julius Randle, who to me is the most improved player of the year this season. I am really intrigued to watch this series because I think it's going to be 2 teams and it's going to be an evenly matched series to me. However, I'm going to say, Logan, Knicks in 7. I think this is going to be a series that Trae Young and Julius Randle will just be on each other in terms of scoring. And I think the Knicks will serve home court. I think they'll handle their business in a Game 7 at Madison Square Garden. So what are your thoughts on this Hawks-Knicks series?
I do definitely like the Knicks in this series. I think that the youth on both sides is going to be very entertaining to watch from an athleticism standpoint. I mean, Julius Randle is that dude for this team. So I'm very interested. I am going to take Knicks in 6.
Okay.
I like the Hawks, but Trae Young has not gotten enough help in my eyes. You mentioned John Collins and Cam Reddish has played well this year, but I do not think it is going to be enough to stop the likes of Julius Randle and R.J. Barrett on that Knicks team.
Yeah, and this is going to be a fun series. The game 1 of that series will be at 7 p.m. on Sunday from Madison Square Garden. That will be one interesting series. Logan, now let's go to the Western Conference and break down the playoff matchups there. And by the way, thank you so much for going playoff series by playoff series with me. It makes it so much fun. Opening weekend of the NBA playoffs is always a lot of fun. So let's go with the Western Conference now. We'll start with Mavericks Clippers, and game 1 of that series will be tomorrow at 4:30 p.m. Eastern Time from Staples Center in LA. And this is actually a repeat of a matchup from last season. Clippers won that series in 6 games. Porzingis went down early on with injuries. And I'm going to have to say the same result as last year. I think this is going to be Clippers in about 6 or 7 games. I just think the Mavericks, outside of Luka Doncic, yeah, they've got guys that can play, like obviously Porzingis and Tim Hardaway Jr. and Dwight Powell. You know, they've got the point guard Jalen Brunson, who's also come out of his shell. So they have quality players, no doubt, but Luka really is the key to their offense. And with the Clippers now getting back together with Kawhi and Paul George, it seems like everything's they're all getting healthy at the right time. And I think that the Clippers should handle their business in about 6 or 7 games against Dallas. Your thoughts on this series, Logan?
I'm going to take the Clippers in 5 or 6 in this series.
Okay.
I think that the Clippers, similar to how you mentioned and talked about Giannis, are going to be on a mission this year to take out the Lakers and the entire West.
Yeah.
And it does definitely include Luka Doncic and the Mavs. The Mavs, in my eyes, this regular season really underperformed.
Yes.
What they were supposed to do. I mean, they definitely picked it up at the end of the season. They got on a little bit of a hot streak. But as NBA has proven, one guy is not enough.
Right.
In the playoffs. I will take the Clippers in 5 or 6 because, like I said, I just think both they have guys who perform. Kawhi, you can make the argument about any of those guys on the team that they've performed in the playoffs at one point or another. And Kawhi is obviously the X factor of that series, so I'm going to go ahead and take the Clippers over the Mavs.
Yeah, and I want to ask you this question too, Logan. Who do you think out of these two players has more pressure in this year's playoffs? Is it Giannis Antetokounmpo, who hasn't made an NBA Finals yet and has had some loaded rosters and great records these last couple of years? Or do you think it's Paul George, who really in recent years hasn't proved himself in the playoffs, especially in the bubble last year, really struggled? And, a lot of people are making noise about the Clippers and how they avoided the Lakers with the playoff seeding and everything. So who do you think of those two players is under more pressure in these playoffs?
I'm going to have to go with Giannis Antetokounmpo. And my reason behind that is going to be the fact that he hasn't won anything on his own. I mean, Paul George back earlier in his career when he played for the Pacers, brought his team to the Eastern Conference Finals to play LeBron James in the Miami Heat.
Right.
So, to me, that does serve a little bit of credit.
Yeah. Absolutely, yeah.
Despite being to the final, or the Eastern Conference Finals, I believe, yeah?
Yeah, in 2019, yes.
2019, yeah. He did have Chris Middleton.
Right.
Not that is, you have another star that discredits you. He didn't make it past it.
Yeah.
And I think that this team is much better than they're playing, meaning that my eyes this postseason are going to be on Giannis Antetokounmpo instead of Paul George, especially considering if you look at the Clippers, Paul George is not their number one guy. It is Kawhi Leonard. So to me, all of the pressure in Milwaukee is on Giannis. However, in Los Angeles, it's a little bit split between Kawhi and PG.
Yeah, and as we were saying, we both have the Clippers winning this series against the Mavericks. Let's go to our next Western Conference playoff series, Logan. 6-seeded Trailblazers, 3-seeded Denver Nuggets. This is an intriguing series because this is a series from 2 years ago. I remember Blazers won in 7 games. It was a very dramatic series. That was the year the Blazers actually went all the way to the Western Conference Finals, got swept by Steph Curry and the Warriors. But this is going to be a very interesting series. In my eyes, Logan, this is going to be a hot take, I think. I've got Dame Time and the Blazers taking this series in 6 games. I think that the Blazers have just, to me, from what I've seen from them and how they've been playing this season, they just seem like they have this X factor and this mentality that they do not want to go home early. I think Carmelo Anthony is at a point in his career where he is really improving, and he's back on a championship, not championship calendar, but a competitive team. I think CJ McCollum back now is really going to help them. And the reason I'm taking the Blazers, honestly, over the Nuggets is the Nuggets don't have Jamal Murray. And I know the Nuggets have been playing very, very well without Jamal Murray after that ACL tear, but Jokic can only do so much. So in playoff basketball, those others have to step up. And to be honest with you, I trust the others of the Portland Trail Blazers to step up more than I do the others of the Denver Nuggets. So I'm taking Blazers in 6. What are your thoughts, Logan?
I again disagree with you here in this particular situation. I will be taking the Denver Nuggets in 6. I think that the Blazers are no joke. That's a team that's very talented. They got a lot of guys that can play basketball, especially postseason. Can't look past Damian Lillard. But to me, CJ McCollum has really struggled in the postseason in his career and in prior seasons. But Nikola Jokic is going to be one of, if not the MVP this season.
Yes.
I don't think you can look past that either, or the fact that Michael Porter Jr. has played on another level.
Yeah, he's really improved.
Past few months without Jamal Murray. So I think that this team is just playing at another level minus Jamal Murray. So I think that there's a very solid chance that the Trailblazers will have to go home early in 6.
Do you think that, how do you think Damian Lillard and CJ McCollum are going to perform in this series, Logan? Because Damian's had, to me, an MVP caliber season all year, and you were talking about CJ McCollum how he's been struggling a bit. How confident are you that they're going to be able to put up their numbers against this Nuggets team?
I think Damian Lillard will do his job. That's my opinion. I think he will probably put up around 35 a game. I know that's kind of out there, but we're talking about Damian Lillard, who is one of the greatest scorers in the NBA right now.
Yeah.
However, for CJ McCollum, I don't expect more than 20. I think that he might struggle a little bit, especially with the likes of a guy like Michael Porter Jr. having to pick him up on particular occasions. And Michael Porter Jr. is one of the most versatile forwards and guards considerations, in between the two in the NBA. So I think McCollum might struggle a little bit to score in the series, but I think Dame Dollar will get his job done.
Yes, and this is going to be a great series, Logan, no matter what happens. So I have Blazers in 6, you have Nuggets in 6. Let's go to our next, our final Western Conference playoff matchup to talk about Los Angeles Lakers, Phoenix Suns, and we were previewing this one as well a little bit ago. Logan, I think this is going to be a series that goes down to the wire, and I've got Lakers in 7. I think that the Phoenix Suns, while they do have a lot of youth, Chris Paul has so many years worth of experience. I think you've got guys like Jay Crowder, DeAndre Ayton. You've got younger guys like Mikal Bridges, Devin Booker. These guys not only are young, but they're extremely hungry to win. And now Chris Paul is feeding these guys the ball. Chris Paul is still putting up numbers as well. I think that this Phoenix team, especially if the Lakers, because, from their sluggish performance on Wednesday night, there's no reason the Suns can't take this series 7 games to me, Logan. Because if the Suns play the way they've been playing and the Lakers kind of are playing this semi-mediocre pace, there's no reason this series isn't going 7 games. But I think LeBron and Anthony Davis will eventually, they'll get it done in Phoenix in a Game 7. Because the Suns, they're the 2nd seed. Lakers are 7th seed. So the Suns will have home court advantage. I think the Lakers will pull this off in 7 games. What are your thoughts, Logan?
I think there is a decent chance that the Suns do force this to 7 games. But again, I'm going to go with maybe a little bit of a risky take here. I'm going to take the Lakers in 5 games.
Oh, okay.
However, I do think that every single one of those games is going to be within 10 points of a difference.
Okay.
Every single one of them. You can quote me on that, and I think Lakers in 5 because of this one factor. Dennis Schroeder, I think from a matchup standpoint, you still have Andre Drummond. I think a lot of people forgot that Lakers team has Andre Drummond. He is a very useful talent to that team, and I think he's going to be a huge piece to that series against the Suns and guarding DeAndre Ayton. But I'm really excited to see. As for the take, I'll repeat it again. I've got Lakers in the 5 within 10 points every single game.
How do you think the Lakers will fare against the quality shooting of Phoenix? Because the Lakers don't have a terrific shooting team. They work more in the post with Anthony Davis and LeBron. So how do you think the Lakers will be able to fare? Basically they're going to have to deal with 3s against 2s for the majority of this series.
Yeah, I think it'll be a contrast series. Similarly, I guess what you could say to what the Celtics and the Nets are going to do. I mean, I think that those two teams are going to be quite interesting to watch. I think you're going to see a lot of post work on one end and a lot of hot shooting on the other. So it'll balance out very nicely.
Yeah.
And we're going to see the battle between Old Testament and the new one.
Yeah.
So I'm really excited to see this series. I think it'll be a battle to the end. Like I said, Lakers in 5.
And final, we can say matchup, Logan. We're going to see who the Utah Jazz's opponent is tonight when the Grizzlies and Warriors face off. So I will give you a quick take here. So if the Grizzlies win and face the Jazz, I think the Jazz will sweep the Memphis Grizzlies. If the Warriors face the Jazz in the first round, which I think is the more likely scenario, I think Utah will win that series in 5 games. So is that what you're thinking as well, Logan, or what's your take on that?
Yeah, I agree about the Memphis take, but the more likely take is the Warriors and Utah. And I will give the Warriors 6 games.
Okay.
I believe that the Jazz will take them out in 6 because of Steph Curry's ability to just put up numbers.
Yeah.
I mean, made the argument, what was it, 5 games with the Lakers and stuff like that. But we're talking about them having LeBron James and Anthony Davis, who could put up numbers, right? But neither of those guys are going to go put up 60.
Right.
Steph Curry will put up 60 to 70 any given day.
Yes.
And I just think that there's no chance that you could stop Steph Curry when he's hot. So I'm going to give him 6 games in this series, but I do think the Utah Jazz will win regardless of who they play. Yeah,
and that concludes NBA playoff talk, ladies and gentlemen. Heat Bucks will be the starter for a slate of games this upcoming weekend for the NBA playoffs. But Logan, I want to talk a little bit here before we move on to Indians talk about the WNBA season. We were talking about this, has been underway. The Connecticut Sun off to a 3-0 start, along with the New York Liberty and the Chicago Sky. So those 3 teams have started out very well in the season. In the Western Conference, it's a little more competitive. The Wings lead the Western Conference. Dallas with a 1-0 record thus far. Phoenix is not far behind them. They're 2-1. And Seattle Storm, they're 2-1 as well, the defending champs. And they won their most recent game. So, Logan, I want to ask you a little bit of what your thoughts have been this week in the WNBA. Who's kind of surprised you? Because the New York Liberty have made a very strong start to the season. I wasn't expecting them to go that far. Candace Parker and the Chicago Sky have had a strong start to the season thus far as well. And I don't think a lot of people were talking about the Connecticut Sun being a true contender. We really never talked about them. And the Washington Mystics, Logan, they're 0-2 to start their season. So it's been quite the surprise to start the WNBA. What are your thoughts?
Yeah, I think with the New York Liberty, I think Sabrina Ionescu is going to be a huge piece of that team, and I think that she's a huge piece as to why they are one of the teams top Eastern Conference to start. As for the Dallas Wings, that team is 1-0, so it's 1 game. I'm not going to make a take on them yet because of the fact that it is only 1 game.
Right.
And going back to the Eastern Conference one more time with Connecticut, I mean, this team, it's a relatively young team, aside from like 2 or 3 people. There's a few people that are veterans on this team, which I think will lead the guard group. But I think that this team, aside from that, is young. It loves to run the floor, and I think that that'll be a very good thing for that Eastern Conference to be able to battle with Connecticut, New York, and even Chicago, who are all undefeated to this point.
How do you feel about the Mystics thus far, Logan? Because, Elena Delle Donne, one of the superstars of the WNBA, but so far 2 games, 2 losses for DC. So how do you feel about the Mystics thus far?
I think that they're going to jump out of it. I think they're in a little bit of a slump obviously with Elena Delazon, I think she is one of the most talented forwards in the WNBA right now. Natasha Cloud is a very talented guard. Ariel Atkins as well. All of them can play. I just think it's a matter of being in a slump. We've seen it in the NBA, and it does happen in the WNBA, believe it or not. So I do think that these girls are going to figure it out come postseason time, and I'm not too worried about this team, but it is something to watch out for sure.
Yeah, and definitely want to watch out for the upcoming schedule and the upcoming games in the WNBA. As of right now, the Atlanta Dream taking on the Indiana Fever. Indiana looking to get their first win of the season this year against Atlanta. Liberty taking on the Mystics right now. We're in the first quarter of that one. Liberty up on the Mystics 14-13. Today we also have a few more games. Sun will be taking on the Mercury. The Connecticut Sun taking on the Mercury today at 10 p.m. and then the Sparks going up against the Aces at 10:30 p.m. tonight. Tomorrow, another big game. Seattle Storm will be taking on the Dallas Wings. And Logan, that concludes our basketball talk, but we still have some baseball talk to get to because the Cleveland Indians have been playing very well. They had a very successful road trip. Again, we were mentioning those games against Seattle. They were kind of struggling against Seattle. They actually lost after that one win they had against Seattle on May 13th. They lost 3 in a row against the Mariners, 2 scores of 7-3 and then 1 score of 3-2. However, they went to California and handled their business against the Angels. Despite losing the first matchup of the 3 to the Angels 7-4, the Indians bounced back with a big win against the Angels 6-5 this past Tuesday, and then they defeated the Angels again 3-2. So some tight games, but they did end up on the winning side for the Indians. If we look at the standings now, Logan, Indians are now firmly planted in that second spot in the American League Central Division. They're 2.5 games behind the Chicago White Sox for that first place seeding in the AL Central. So, Logan, the Indians, not great, 6-4 in their last 10 games, but they've had a lot of road games to start this season, and they've been getting the job done for the most part. So, especially in those series against the Angels, how do you feel about the Indians thus far?
I think that they've played well, like you mentioned. I mean, the one loss on Monday, one of the problems that I talked about recently with the Indians was giving up runs in bulk, giving up rallies early.
Yeah.
And in that game, second inning, the Angels had 5 runs. And that was a huge, crucial piece. I mean, with just the second inning, they beat the Indians.
Right.
So, to me, I think that, that was one of the main things that is going to need to be fixed as the regular season tears on. But besides that, the last 2 games on Tuesday and Wednesday were fantastic wins. They were tight ones that the pitchers and the closers weren't able to finish off in Los Angeles.
How do you think the Indians will fare against the Minnesota Twins? Because Minnesota's had kind of an up and down schedule, or up and down results in their schedule so far this year, Logan. The Indians will kick off 3 straight home games against Minnesota, and it starts today, 7:10 p.m. And then the Twins will then be in Cleveland again tomorrow, 4:10, and then on Sunday as well at 1:10 p.m. for their third matchup with the Indians. In terms of the standings for Minnesota, they're last in the American League Central Division. They're 15-28, and so to me, this should be 3 easy Indians wins, in my opinion. Just by the way they've been playing these last few games, the momentum they have, especially now that they're on home field. I'm expecting the Indians to win all 3 games in this short 3-game series. Do you feel the same way, Logan?
Yeah, I do. I think that the Twins team has been way too inconsistent. Not that the Indians have been super consistent in comparison, but I still think that the Indians will have the upper hand in this series, especially being at Progressive Field and home in Cleveland. So I will also take Indians in all 3 wins at home against Minnesota.
Yeah, so hopefully the Indians can extend that winning streak to 5 after Sunday in that final game against the Twins. Upcoming schedule for the Indians, so I talked about those 3 games they'll have against Minnesota. Monday, May 24th, they'll be back out on the road for 4 straight games against the Detroit Tigers at Comerica Park. The Tigers in their standings, they are 17-26, and they're 8-2 in their last 10. That's the best record for any AL League Central team in their last 10 games. So Indians are going to have their hands full in that one. The Indians will then return home after that 4-game series against Detroit for 3 matches against the Toronto Blue Jays, and then 4 matches against the Chicago White Sox. Those 4 matchups against Chicago will be huge for the standings, as the Indians will want to try to get to first place in the AL Central Division. Logan, in these next few games, especially against lower teams like Minnesota and Detroit, I know Detroit's been on a winning streak, I was just talking about it, but what do you want to see from them? Because I definitely think these are games the Indians can win and get some more wins under their belt before they have some big games against Chicago.
Yeah, for once, I don't honestly want to see too much improvement. I think they've been doing almost everything right. I mean, they just they lost to a really tough Seattle team that's been doing a lot of good things in the MLB this year. But I really want to see the closers continue to finish off games, and I want to see the bats, like I mentioned earlier last week, get going early.
Yeah.
And get your runs on your board, take the pressure off the starters, and they might be able to go a little bit deeper, and then those closers can come in and finish those last 2 innings off with a couple strikeouts on the side. And I'm really hoping that they will take all 3, and I think that those are the 2 keys to taking all 3 against Minnesota.
Yeah, Indians are definitely going to want to win their games against Minnesota. Their first matchup with Chicago will be at the end of the month. Monday, May 31st is when the White Sox will be in town against the Indians. Those will be 4 big games, as I mentioned, for those seeding positions. Logan, final topic of the podcast today. I want to focus on the NFL for a bit here, and more specifically the Jacksonville Jaguars, who this week finalized a deal with Tim Tebow. Now, a lot of speculation has risen from this due to the fact that, Tim Tebow got this opportunity because Urban Meyer was the head coach, and there's been a lot of dynamics involved with this situation. But in terms of Tebow now adjusting to the tight end position, having been a quarterback for all of his career, how do you think this is going to help the Jacksonville Jaguars? Because I'm looking at their schedule right now, Logan, and it's a pretty tough schedule. They're playing some quality teams. They're playing the Broncos, the Cardinals. They've got games against the Titans. The Tua Tagovailoa and the Dolphins are nothing to sneeze at. They'll be playing the Dolphins. They'll also be playing the Colts, the Falcons with their high-powered offense. They're going to be playing the 49ers. Jimmy Garoppolo will be back. They're playing the LA Rams. They've got another game against the Titans. They're playing the Patriots as well in January. So the Jaguars, it's not the hardest schedule, not saying that, but it's definitely not a schedule to take lightly. So how do you think, with the addition of now Trevor Lawrence at the quarterback and Urban Meyer, how can Tim Tebow help this team moving forward, especially with these tough games that they're going to have this season?
I mean, physically, from a numbers and actually making plays standpoint, I don't think he's going to make a huge difference, right? And I know that's
right.
So super shocking to make that take, but I really don't think he's going to be a guy who goes out and actually makes plays for the team.
Yeah.
I think he's going to be much more of a locker room kind of guy.
Yeah.
For sure. I think he's going to be one of those guys that will be in the locker room. He'll be the leader. He'll be that, veteran guy who's been there before. So I think that he's going to make a tremendous impact on the mental aspect from the locker room. But physically, I don't expect too much coming from Tim Tebow this season.
How do you feel about the Jaguars as well, Logan? In their division, they're AFC South. They're dealing with the Titans, the Colts, and the Texans. I think the Jaguars can possibly finish third, if not second, in that division, because I think Tennessee is going to have a very strong season, as they did last year again. I think the Texans are just going to get worse from here. I think they're going to finish bottom of the AFC South. So I think really for Jacksonville, it's a battle with them and the Indianapolis Colts for that 2-3 seed. I think if the Jaguars win a share of their games, they can get that second seed in the AFC South. So what are your thoughts? Do you think the Jaguars, with the talent they have now, can get to that spot in the AFC South?
Well, I think it's definitely a possibility. but I wouldn't go as far as saying that it's, they're the favorite for second. And the only reason that I will put that out there is because we do have to consider they were 1-15 last year.
Yeah, absolutely.
And I don't know if adding one or two guys is going to make you go from 1-15 to probably they have to win at least a bare minimum of 9 games.
Yeah.
So I don't know if you're thinking they're going to win 9 or 10, which is, like I said, still possible. But I don't know about that. I think that this team is going to take another year or so for Trevor Lawrence to not only get used to the system, but maybe add a couple of guys around him offensively and defensively to finish off the AFC South and finally be one of those teams that can compete come playoff time.
Yeah, it'll be very interesting to see how this Jaguars season turns out. Obviously, a lot of eyes will be on them because of that number 1 pick in Trevor Lawrence. So we'll see, and they're gonna have some challenging games this year. So I'm gonna be very intrigued to see how they handle not only the pressure on the football field, but also the pressure outside, especially with that media. Logan, that concludes our most recent episode of the Cleveland Sports Show. Thank you so much for joining me today. I really appreciate all of your analysis with everything, especially in breaking down every single NBA playoff series. I really appreciate your time with that. It was really great talking some playoff basketball with you. Super happy that the Indians are doing well, and we now have something great to talk about with them as well. So happy to talk about the WNBA with you. Thanks for such a great show, another great show, Logan. Have a terrific weekend, and I'll see you for our next show.
Of course. Thank you for having me.
Of course, it's a pleasure. And ladies and gentlemen, it was also a pleasure having you listen to the Cleveland Sports Show with me. Thank you so much for your time this week. Really appreciate you spending your day listening to the show. However, you're probably crying right now because you're thinking, Darius, please don't end this podcast episode. It was so amazing. I'm actually bawling out tears right now because the podcast is over. Don't worry. Wipe those tears away wipe those tears away because it's only a click away. You can head to NordoniaHills.News and find all of my work on my page on that website. If you're on NordoniaHills.News, just go to the Contributors tab, click on that tab, and you'll find my name. It's the second one down, Darius Sethna, spelled Dariussethna. Once you find that, click on my name, and you'll be able to see my entire page of work on NordoniaHills.News. I've got my podcast episodes, some articles I've written for NordoniaHills.News, and if you keep scrolling down, you'll actually find some of the basketball broadcasts I did with NordoniaHills.News, Nordonia High School Boys Varsity Basketball play-by-play. You're not going to want to miss out on those if you missed out on the season, because they had some great games this year. You are not going to want to miss out on those. I can't emphasize that enough, so make sure you check those out. I'm doing the play-by-play for those, so make sure you take a listen. Also, you can find all of my work on Twitter as well. If you are on Twitter, just type in my Twitter handle. It's @NordoniaSports. Or you can just type in my name in the Twitter search bar as well. Once again, it's spelled Dariussethna. Click on my name and Nordonia Sports, and you'll be able to see all my work on there as well. Links to the podcast, links to the articles from NordoniaHills.News. It's all there for you, ready for you on Twitter. If you're on YouTube, well, guess what? You also have access to the Cleveland Sports Show. Just go to the NordoniaHills.News YouTube page, and they will, I'm very happy, Mrs. D'Aloiso has been posting the episodes to the podcast with the help of her daughter Maria. They're helping me edit out the podcast and do things like that, and they're taking time out of their day to post it on YouTube, so I'm very thankful for them for doing that for me. And you can view all the episodes of the podcast right there on the Nordonia Hills News YouTube page. But guess what? There's more. That's right. If you're on the go, don't worry, because you can take the Cleveland Sports Show with you. I'm very happy to say that the Cleveland Sports Show has been on Spotify for a while now. And guess what? If you are on Spotify, just type in my name in the Spotify search bar. Just type in my name, spelled Dariussethna, Darius Sethna. Once you find my name, just click on my podcast, and all my episodes will be there, ready, waiting for you. You'll also find some sports breaks I did with during my senior internship with Mr. Christopher Dominic at WMVU Radio Free Akron. We did some sports breaks. I was assigned the title of Resident Sports Guru and we just talked about sports and past glories of the Cleveland Browns and other interesting topics in sports. So make sure you check that out as well. Again, it's all on Spotify, waiting for you on the go. So no matter where you are, you can take the Cleveland Sports Show with you. Ladies and gentlemen, that concludes my most recent episode of the Cleveland Sports Show. Thank you so much for your time this week in another amazing episode. Special thank you again to Logan Purcell for all of his terrific work and analysis in making this yet another very successful show. Until our next episode of the Cleveland Sports Show, ladies and gentlemen, have a terrific week. Take care, and I'll see you next time.